Hello everyone and welcome back to Genie Crafts. In today's video, I'm once again going to talk about string portrait, but it's different from rest of the videos that I have posted on my channel because all the other videos of string portrait required that sequence of numbers which you need to know to loop the string through the nails. But this string portrait can be done without a template. This video is going to be slightly long because there are a lot of steps that you need to follow. There is a lot of preparation that you need to do, but if you spend that much amount of time, the final result is going to be well worth it. So guys, let's get started. So the first thing that you need for your string art is a base. For this I have utilized 18 mm thick red MDF board. It's a square board because my picture was in the form of a square. You can use a circular board also. The shape of the board does not matter in this kind of string art. The only thing that you need to be careful about is the thickness of the board. You can go with as low as 11 mm, but if you go below that, then the chances are that the board might bend. And the first step is for you to prepare your board. So after you have cleaned the surface of the board of dust and other particles, then I'm using the white gesso to create a white background for my portrait. You can utilize white spray paint also, but it will have a glossy look. If you have matte spray paint, then it's even better. Now this is a quite big board. The size of the board, as you can see, is big. It's almost 2 feet by 2 feet. I think it's exactly 2 feet by 2 feet. I had it cut with the local carpenter. And use a paint roller because that creates a more even finish as opposed to using a brush, but it's your choice. You can use brush also. So that's the first thing that I'm doing, is creating a white background, matte white background. Typically I do it twice or thrice to create an even finish, but if you're able to do it with one layer, that's also fine. Once your board is prepared and dry, the next step is to lay out the print of the photograph for which you want to create the portrait. Now, if you are very confident that you can just do with a regular photograph clicked from a phone or a camera, you can go with that also. But normally in a regular photograph, it's difficult to identify the areas of highlights and shadows. So what I normally would suggest is that you create your photograph, or you turn your photograph into a layered art. Now there are a lot of videos on my channel which talk about how to convert a photograph into a layered picture, and I will separately post a video for my Rising Genie membership wherein I will talk about how to specifically prepare a photograph for this kind of string art. So you guys can check it out later. That video will also be live along with this video. As you can see that there are layers in this photograph. You can see that there are 3 colors. There is black, then there is dark gray, then there is light gray, and then finally the background of the board, which is white. Now one of the problems with converting a photograph into a layer template is that the edges of the layers are very jagged. That means that there are a lot of corners and dips and ups and downs, which is not conducive to a string art, because when you put nails onto the board, there is a certain minimum distance that you have to maintain between the nails. So the first thing that I'm doing right now is simplifying the edges of the layers. I'm making them round and smooth rather than jagged. So this will allow you to position your nails correctly, and this is important because otherwise you won't be able to put nails rightly, and there will be too many nails that will be required if you do not actually perform this step. So that's the second step in the preparation, is to prepare the layered printout of your photograph. Actually this is the third step. Second step is to get this photograph in the form of a layered format, and then the third step is to simplify those layers so that you can use it for layered art. So that's what I am doing, and once I have done that, then we'll proceed to the next step of marking the positions where the nails should be done. So now we move on to the next step of marking the nail positions. Now different artists have different way of doing it. I have seen a lot of artists doing this kind of string art, but I was trying to figure out the easiest and the best way to do it with the least number of nails possible. Now in the next step of marking the nails, so there are 2 ways in which you can do it. A lot of artists, what they do is that they put this template on top of their board, and without even removing the template, they will just simply start hammering the nails at the places where they want to be. Now this is a very good way of doing, because you exactly know where the nails are going, what portions of your photograph they are covering. But at the same time, it poses a big challenge of removing that paper after you have put in the nails, because there will be places where it will be very difficult to remove the paper, and it's almost impossible to completely remove the paper, because when you hammer in the nails take a little bit of paper also inside the board along with them, and it becomes difficult to remove the paper around such nails. So I'm using the second method, where with the help of a pointed tool, in my case I'm using a compass, where with the help of a compass I am simply marking the positions on the board where I want to hammer in the nails. Now one drawback of this is that after I have done putting the markings, I'm going to remove the paper to hammer in the nails. I always have to keep the photograph in front of me as a reference to understand which portion of the image I am hammering the nails for, because seeing all those dots on your board, it will become very confusing in some time. So that's a drawback of this approach, but I preferred this approach because there was no paper residue on my board. So it's completely your choice how you want to do it. One of the mistakes that I did, and I hope you guys don't repeat it, is that I put the dots too close in some places. I forgot to take into account the width of the head of the nail, the top of the nail, which is always little broad or broader than the rest of the nail body. So later on you will see in the video that a lot of nails are very close to each other. It's very difficult to actually loop the thread across those nails, so caused me a lot of trouble when I was doing the looping, but that's a learning for the next time. So you have to be careful about such things. Another thing you have to be careful about when you are placing the marks or when you are hammering in the nails directly on paper is that you have to position the nails in such a way so that the outline of your layer is created. It should not look very pointy or too linear geometrical in nature, that like straight lines. The curve on the lip, for example, should form. The curve on the nose and the eyes should form. The curve of the face should form with the help of the nails. It should not look like straight lines connected to each other. So you have to position that many nails at least. Another mistake that I did was on the borders. I spaced the nail quite far, which created problem for me later on, because there were not enough nails on the border of the portrait for me to create the density of the looping that I wanted to, and you will see all this later in the video. I'll talk about it again. So that's one more thing that I will be careful about next time. So as a thumb rule, I would suggest, wherever possible, keep a minimum 5 to 6 mm gap between the nails, but there will be areas where the nails would need to be close to each other to create the shape. For example, a very good example is eye and nose. The nails will need to be close to each other, so in that case try to make them as close to each other without really them touching with each other. So those are the things that you should be careful about when you are either hammering in the nails or plotting the position of the nails. So guys, here we are with all the nails done. So as you can see, you can clearly identify where the layer borders are, because there the nails are quite close to each other. And then the mistake that I was talking about earlier, if you can see on the edges of the board, the nails are very far from each other. So I needed to have at least one nail more in between the distance that is currently there, right? Also, you can see a lot of nails in between randomly placed. So I call them anchor nails because they help to create more pathways for the thread to loop through. But later on I realized that they are not as important for the string art portrait of this kind, because I barely use them. So you can have them in place if required, but I don't think that they were of much use. In fact, they created more problems than they solved it. Also, I have kept the photograph with me for reference because some of the areas, especially around the eyes, nose and lips, are quite complicated, so I had to refer to them again and again. Now it's also useful to have the photograph handy with you, because then you will know exactly where what color of thread is going to go. So for the hair, the color that I'm going to utilize is the normal black color, and then for the gray area I purchased a dark gray shade of polyester thread. For the lips I used two shades of magenta, and for eye I used two shades of gray and black. So these were the different colors that I utilized. Whenever you're starting with a particular layer within your photograph, the first step is always to create the border. That means that you simply keep looping the thread across the nails that define the border for that layer. So that will help you in avoiding mistakes of looping the thread when you accidentally venture into a region which is supposed to be of a different thread color and so on. So it will help you with that. So that's the first thing that you need to do, is to create the border. Now when you are looping the thread between two nails, there are a total of 4 to 5 different ways in which you can loop the thread. So that means that if there are two nails situated at 2 points on your board, there are 4 to 5 different kind of loops that you can create between these two nails. And when you have so many nails on a layer bordering the entire layer, so you can imagine how many number of combinations that are there. So the different looping techniques I have separately covered in another video. You can subscribe to the Rising Genie membership to watch that video and understand how to increase the density of a given layer between a given set of nails with the help of the different way in which you can loop the thread between the nails. So that will help you, and I utilize those techniques because if between two nails I am using all 5 combinations, obviously the density of thread there will be high. But if I am utilizing only 2 combinations or 3 combinations, the density will be low. So that this gives you a way of managing the density of the thread between the two nails for a given layer. So that was very helpful. So I request you guys to go and watch that video to understand that how to manage the density between the layers for between the nails for a given layer. Okay, so right now what I'm doing is I'm simply creating the border, and it is an interlocked border technique that I'm utilizing. I'm not using the simple technique of creating the border, so that also I've covered in my video on my Rising Genie membership, so you guys can go and check it out. Once you have created the border, then comes the tedious and long task of looping the thread between the nails, and it's time consuming. It's going to cost you a lot of time, so you have to be patient, and you cannot do the entire layer in one go. So you start portion by portion. You start from one portion, create the required density there, then you go to the other portion, create the required density, and so on. And you have to be very careful that your thread is not coming on top of areas which are of other colors. For example, there is a earring in between the black area, right? So I cannot have black thread crossing that specific portion of the portrait, because a different yellow color is going to go there to define the earrings, right? So that's how you have to proceed. So after creating the border for a layer, I started with the tricky areas first, like the eye, and then I moved toward rest of the areas. So my whole goal was that I should be able to cover all the areas without breaking the thread as much as possible. Obviously there were certain areas which were completely isolated, so I had to break the thread and redo and reconnect for those specific areas. But other than that, I tried to keep the thread connected as much as possible. So there is no pattern to it, right? Like I said earlier, you have the set of nails. Now it's up to you how you arrange the thread between the nails to create a homogeneous density of thread looping. And I stress the word homogeneous because if you do not do it properly, then it will look quite patchy, as it did for me also, because I used too much of anchor nails, too much of starting point for the anchor nails, and those anchor nails looked like quite patchy. Like density was very high around those anchor nails, and then the density in the rest of the portion was not good. So I have not covered it in the video, but after I completed the portrait, I retook the black thread and redid the looping again, because as I proceeded into the portrait, as I went ahead into the portrait, there were a lot of techniques that I found, or I should say discovered again, because which I was not using earlier. So if you will see later on in the video, the looping of the other colors was quite homogeneous and quite beautiful looking as compared to the black thread, because black thread was the starting point. I myself did not know how to go about it, so I was also experimenting, and this was my first portrait of this kind. I have never made a string portrait of this kind. So the hair was the experimental portion, so it looked a little bit patchy, and if you saw at the photos at the beginning, the density of the hair was not that good because of several mistakes, like nails being too far from each other on the border. Another mistake that I did was that I utilized a very thin thread, which is not recommended because the area is huge. You have to cover a lot of area, so a thicker thread would do well. For example, if you are using a weight 60 thread, it will create density much quicker than if you are using a weight 80 thread. You can even use weight 40 thread if you want, but you have to ensure that all the threads are of same weight, otherwise it will look a little bit out of place, that one thread is of one weight, other thread is of other weight. So you have to be careful about that. So this is what I was talking about earlier, that you can see that hair looks quite patchy. In some places it's completely black, in the other places you can see the background color quite well. And this was like I said, because of 2 or 3 reasons. One, on the border the nail distance was quite large, it needed to be much closer to each other. Second, the thread that I utilized was my regular colored portrait thread of weight 80, which did not suit for this at all. I needed to use at least weight 60, and at the end, after I finished the portrait, without recording, I did correct my portrait by redoing the entire looping on top of the existing thread that was there. I redid the entire thing with the help of a weight 60 thread, so it kind of increased the density of the black area and it looked much blacker. So that's what I was talking about earlier. So you have to be careful about that. Also, there are some places where you are seeing black patches in between near the anchor nails. That was because I used anchor nail as a starting point and then looped rest of the surrounding nails, which is not recommended. Always use the border nails as your anchor nails, or the key nails. Use the anchor nail only if there is a patch of different color in between, or if you're not able to maneuver the thread to the required nail directly, so you can use anchor nail as a direction changing, so that will be much better. I learned it later. Later on in the other nails, I did not utilize the anchor nails at all. I simply used the border nails as much as possible. So these are some of the mistakes that I did. I'm talking about them so that when you try this out, you don't repeat the same mistakes. Once I was done with the one overall connected area for the black, there were certain portions on the nose which were completely isolated from rest of the black layer, so I had to separately do it, which means that I retied the nail at a starting point on that specific area and created the mesh of the thread to generate the black portion. So that was one of the things that you need to be aware of, that not all portions you will be able to connect with a single thread, but there will be some portions where you'll need to break the thread and restart again. So that's okay, you can do that as long as the extra thread is not hanging anywhere, it's not looking bad, it's fine. So after I was done with the black layer, then I moved to the next layer, which is this dark gray color. It looks black, but just for comparison I'm putting black beside it, so you can see that It's slightly different from the black color, and once you put it on the on the canvas, you could see that there was a difference in the color. Right now you can see that the black area is quite white looking, so like I said, I fixed it later. So with the next color also, the first thing that I did was to create the border, and once the border was created, I started creating a homogeneous mesh of this gray thread. Now obviously the density of this gray thread cannot be equal to that of the black thread, because it has to be slightly lower to create that layered effect, and that's why I kept it quite sparse, not as dense as I had done for the black, so that means lesser number of loopings for the gray color. Also for the gray color, I already learned from my previous mistake, so I did not use the weight 80 thread, so I used the weight 60, and it was much easier to get the desired density quite quickly as compared to the black one. So like I said at the beginning also, it was a learning process for me. As I kept on building the portrait, it kept on occurring to me the different mistakes that I was doing, and I kept on correcting them also. So the later portions of the portrait are quite good looking as compared to the initial portions of the portrait. And now we are doing the last layer, that is the last color, which is light gray. But to introduce a little color into the entire portrait, later on I changed the color of earrings from gray to yellow, and I used two colors for the lips, that is the light magenta and the dark magenta. So dark magenta was utilized to create the shadow effect on the lips. So when you are doing string portrait, one of the key rules, if you are doing it without template, is to have shades of the same color, especially for specific regions like earrings, nose, eyes, or lips especially, because if there is a shadow effect in your printout, then you can always achieve that shadow effect with the help of different or a darker shade of the same color, as you can see. So I have two shades, one light and one dark, and I utilized that to create that shadow effect on the lip, and it looks quite subtle and it looks quite good also. So it's important to have different shades of the same color to create these kind of effects. If you do not have different shades, if the colors are quite varying from each other, then what will happen is that it will look patchy rather than a shade effect. So as you can see on the screen, the nails on the lip area are quite close to each other, because there is no other way to do it. You have to put the nails in a way so that the shape of the lip is formed, but at the same time you have to put the nails in a way so that you have space between the nails to actually maneuver the thread. As long as you have even half a millimeter space between the heads of the two nails, you will be able to maneuver the nails, but you have to be careful that you do not hurt your fingernails while doing the maneuvering, because I did hurt my fingernails, because the nails were so close to each other that whenever I tried to loop in the thread, the heads of the nails will dig into my fingernails and hurt me. So you have to be careful about these things when you are doing these arts, right? So I think that's about it, the different things that you need to be careful about, and when you are doing this kind of portrait, and how to do this kind of portrait also. I've tried to cover as much information as possible. Still, if you guys have any questions regarding this art, then please do let me know. Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention, that a total of 1300 nails were used to create this portrait. It might not look like it, but there are a total of 1300 nails on this board. So I hope you guys liked this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys found this video useful, then please do not forget to hit the like button and share this video with your friends. Also do subscribe to my channel for regular videos on string art, paper arts, and other forms of arts. And I will see you guys very soon in my next video. Till then, stay safe, take care, and bye-bye.